Welcome back, dear listener. As the night deepens and your breathing slows, let us leave behind the noise of politics and turn instead to the quiet realm of knowledge, the quest for understanding that transcends time, creed, and empire. Tonight we explore the profound relationship between Freemasonry and science, a bond often overlooked, yet foundational to the ethos of the craft. For behind the veils of ritual and symbol lies a deep respect for inquiry, reason, and the illumination of the human mind. Freemasonry emerged in the early modern period, a time of seismic shifts in thought and learning. The scientific revolution had begun to challenge ancient dogmas. The telescope and microscope opened new vistas of the cosmos and the cell. Thinkers like Galileo, Newton, and Kepler rewrote humanity's understanding of nature and its laws. In this fertile ground of curiosity and courage, the principles of Masonry found resonance. The lodge, though spiritual, is a temple of reason. It welcomes men who believe in a supreme being, but asks them also to sharpen their minds. It does not preach a creed, but fosters a method of careful reflection, shared inquiry, and lifelong learning. In the Masonic worldview, faith and reason are not enemies, but companions on the same path. Let us begin with one of the most iconic figures of science, Sir Isaac Newton. Though his Masonic membership remains debated, his worldview profoundly shaped the intellectual climate in which Freemasonry took root. Newton was a man of paradox, scientist and mystic, rationalist and alchemist. He believed that the universe was governed by laws, but also imbued with meaning. His idea of a cosmos held together by invisible forces mirrored the Masonic vision of an ordered, intelligible world. Many early Masons were also scientists or patrons of science. The Royal Society, founded in 1660 in London, became a hub for empirical research. Several of its members were active in Masonic lodges. The lines between speculative Masonry and scientific society often blurred. Both sought truth not by fiat, but by experiment, dialogue, and observation. Freemasonry honors geometry not only as a mathematical discipline, but as a philosophical key. The compasses and square are not just tools of the builder, but of the thinker. Geometry was once known as the sacred science because it revealed patterns in creation. From the Pythagorean theorem to the spiral of the Nautilus, the Masonic worldview sees in numbers and proportions the fingerprint of the divine. Astronomy holds a special place in the Masonic imagination. The lodge is symbolically oriented to the celestial east, and its rituals often refer to stars, planets, and the journey of light. This cosmic awareness reflects an ancient intuition that to know the heavens is to better understand ourselves. Lodges have historically hosted lectures on astronomy and natural philosophy, and Masons have supported observatories and the dissemination of scientific knowledge. In the 18th and 19th centuries, as science advanced rapidly, Masons were often at the forefront of education reform. They founded schools, libraries, and learned societies. In France, the encyclopédistes, editors of the Great Enlightenment Compendium of Knowledge, included many Masons. In the Americas, Masonic lodges became centers of intellectual life, hosting debates, publishing pamphlets, and advocating for public schooling. Freemasonry's emphasis on personal development dovetailed naturally with scientific inquiry. Both value skepticism of easy answers. Both teach that truth is found not in dogma, but in exploration. The initiate in Masonry is called a seeker. So too is the scientist, testing, refining, always reaching. Some of history's most influential scientists were known or believed to be Masons. Benjamin Franklin was a member of the craft, a polymath whose interests spanned electricity, diplomacy, philosophy, and invention. Michael Faraday, a pioneer of electromagnetism, was supported by Masonic patrons. Even in the realms of medicine, botany, and chemistry, lodges attracted those who saw in science a means to serve humanity. And yet, this alliance has not been without controversy. Critics have accused Freemasonry of cloaking dangerous ideas in ritual. In deeply religious societies, scientific inquiry, especially when it challenged scripture, was seen as heretical. Masons, with their advocacy for free thought and empirical study, became targets. In some countries, the association with science only deepened suspicion toward the fraternity. But the Masonic defense has always been the same. Knowledge is not a threat to faith, but its ally. To understand the laws of nature is to glimpse the mind of the Creator. The Lodge teaches reverence for both revelation and reason, scripture and microscope. Let us pause and picture a lodge room in the 18th century. Candles flicker on the altar. A speaker rises, not to preach, but to present a lecture on optics. Diagrams are unrolled. Lenses pass from hand to hand. The brethren listen, not in blind acceptance, but in curiosity. The search for light, spiritual and intellectual, continues. In modern times, Freemasonry has adapted to a world awash with information. Lodges now host talks on technology, ethics, and artificial intelligence. The core principle remains that the mind, like the soul, must be cultivated. That ignorance is not innocence, but a kind of darkness. Masonic libraries, museums, and research bodies continue to collect and share knowledge. From genetics to history, philosophy to engineering, the craft encourages members to remain students of the world. Education is not a preparation for life, it is life itself. What can we learn from this chapter of the Masonic tradition? That truth is not given once, but revealed gradually. That the universe is a great book, written in the language of numbers and patterns. That the builder's tools, once used to raise temples, now shape minds. Freemasonry is not a laboratory, but it is a school without walls, where inquiry is sacred and questions are welcome. As your thoughts settle into sleep, let this image remain. A quiet chamber lined with books and instruments, a circle of listeners, a single flame casting long shadows, and in the silence between words, the gentle unfolding of understanding. For in the end, every Mason is a scientist of the soul, measuring, refining, building toward light. Welcome back, dear listener. Tonight, under the quiet gaze of the stars, we turn our attention to a subject often left in the shadows of Masonic history: the place of women. For centuries, Freemasonry has been seen as a brotherhood, exclusive, male, and traditional. But like any enduring institution, it has faced questions, challenges, and change. This chapter explores the role of women in relation to Freemasonry, the prohibitions, the exceptions, the myths, and the movements that have sought to include Freemasonry as it is most widely practiced today, the so-called regular or mainstream Masonry, traditionally admits only men. This principle stems from the earliest known Masonic constitutions, including the 1723 Constitutions of the Freemasons, compiled by James Anderson. There, the craft is described as a society of men, built upon fraternal bonds and male initiation rites. The rationale is complex. Some argue it is rooted in the historical reality that the operative Masons, builders of cathedrals and castles, were male. Others point to ritual structure. Masonic degrees often include gender-specific symbolism, which some believe would be disrupted by mixed membership. There are also arguments based on tradition, privacy, and the desire for a space where men can reflect on their moral duties in the company of peers. Yet, history tells a more nuanced story. There have always been women who, by accident or intention, cross the thresholds of the craft. One of the earliest known cases is that of Elizabeth Aldworth, an Irish noblewoman in the 18th century who reportedly witnessed a Masonic initiation by accident and was then herself initiated to preserve the secret. Her story, while difficult to verify, became a legend among Irish Masons. In France, the 18th century saw the creation of adoptive Masonry, a system of lodges for women, often associated with male lodges. These adoptive lodges featured modified rituals and degrees, with symbols and teachings tailored to female members. Though not fully equal to regular lodges, they offered a space for women to engage with Masonic ideas, often attracting aristocrats, intellectuals, and reform-minded women. The 19th and 20th centuries saw the birth of co-Masonry. Most notably, in 1893, the French theosophist Maria d'Erasmus was initiated into a male lodge. With the support of Georges Martin, she later helped found the Order of International Co-Freemasonry, Le Droit Humain. This order, now global, admits men and women on equal terms and emphasizes human rights, social justice, and spiritual growth. It remains outside regular Masonic recognition, but has inspired parallel efforts around the world. Women's participation has expanded in other ways as well. Some grand lodges, especially in Latin America and continental Europe, now recognize women's obediences. Female-only Masonic bodies, such as the Women's Grand Lodge of France and the Order of Women Freemasons in the UK, maintain their own traditions, rituals, and organizational structures. In the United States, regular Masonry remains male-only, but affiliated organizations for women have long existed. The Order of the Eastern Star, founded in the mid-19th century, admits both men and women, though it operates under different principles than the main craft. It offers a moral and charitable framework inspired by biblical heroines, blending Masonic themes with Christian values. There are also Masonic youth organizations that include young women, such as Job's Daughters and the International Order of the Rainbow for Girls. These groups aim to instill civic virtue, leadership, and community service. Though not Masonic in the strict sense, they represent a bridge between tradition and inclusivity. Critics of gender exclusion argue that Masonry's values, equality, fraternity, enlightenment, are undermined when half of humanity is excluded. They question whether the original justifications remain valid in an era that values inclusion and diversity. Some argue that spiritual and moral growth is not gendered, and that the tools of Masonry, the square, the compasses, the level, apply equally to all. Defenders of traditional Masonry respond that single-gender spaces have value, that the rituals were designed for a particular experience, and that parallel paths, such as women's lodges and co-Masonry, can flourish without changing the foundations of regular Masonry. The debate continues. In some regions, tensions run high. In others, peaceful coexistence prevails, with mutual respect between different Masonic traditions. What is clear is that the question of women in Masonry is not settled. It is evolving, shaped by culture, history, and the personal convictions of Masons themselves. Let us pause now and imagine a lodge where women meet in silence and dignity. Candles glow, symbols are studied, lessons are shared. Outside, a world may question their place, but inside they build their own temple of virtue. The deeper truth, perhaps, is that the Masonic path is not defined by gender, but by the journey, by the willingness to reflect, to grow, to serve. Whether under the gaze of Solomon or Sophia, the work remains the same: to refine the self, to aid humanity, to seek light. And so we close this chapter not with a verdict, but with a question. What does it mean to be a builder of wisdom? And who, truly, may take up the tools? The answer, like the craft itself, continues to unfold, and wherever the lodge door opens, be it for man or woman, the work within must always be sacred. Welcome, dear listener, one last time. As our journey nears its end, we step gently into the present, guided by the echoes of the past. Tonight, we explore the state of Freemasonry today, its challenges and transformations, its rituals and relevance, its ongoing dialogue with a rapidly changing world. For while the myths may be ancient and the symbols timeless, the craft itself continues to evolve. Freemasonry in the 21st century stands at a crossroads. In many countries, it faces declining membership, aging lodges, and growing public skepticism. The secrecy that once protected its rituals now invites suspicion. Conspiracy theories flourish online, blurring fact with fiction. Yet, at the same time, a quiet revival is underway. New generations seek meaning, structure, and fraternity, and some find it behind the tiled doors of the lodge. Why do men and women still become Masons? The answers are as varied as the members themselves. Some are drawn by family tradition, others by curiosity. Many seek a sense of purpose, a framework for moral development, or simply a space to reflect amid the noise of modern life. For some, Freemasonry offers spiritual depth without dogma. For others, it is a network of mentors, colleagues, and friends. The essential work of the lodge remains unchanged: to make good people better. This is done not through doctrine, but through ritual, symbol, and shared experience. Initiation, progression through degrees, the study of allegory. All these create a path of introspection and refinement. The tools of the builder become metaphors for ethical living. The temple under construction is the self. Modern Masonry is diverse. In the United States and the UK, regular lodges remain male-only, with a strong emphasis on tradition. In France, Latin America, and parts of Europe, co-masonry and women's obediences are more common. In Africa and Asia, Freemasonry often blends with local customs, languages, and cultural frameworks. The universality of Masonry lies in its adaptability. Technology, too, is reshaping the craft. Some lodges now use digital tools for education, recruitment, and communication. Online forums host philosophical debates and historical research. During the COVID-19 pandemic, virtual meetings kept brethren connected, while ritual work remains primarily physical and in-person. The Masonic world has grown more connected than ever before. Public engagement is also evolving. Masonic charities raise millions for hospitals, scholarships, disaster relief, and community projects. Open houses and lectures invite the curious to learn more. Museums preserve the legacy of the craft, while documentaries and podcasts introduce its stories to new audiences. Transparency has become a strategy, not a threat. Yet, Freemasonry's greatest challenges are internal. How does it remain relevant to younger generations? How does it balance tradition with innovation? Can a centuries-old ritual still speak to the digital age? Some lodges answer these questions with renewal, revisiting rituals, modernizing language, opening new spaces for dialogue. Others double down on tradition, seeing its endurance as a virtue. The tension between these paths is not new. Masonry has always evolved in cycles, Reformation followed by Restoration. What binds the fraternity, despite these differences, is its commitment to the inner life. At a time when society is often fragmented and superficial, the craft offers depth. In a culture of distraction, it invites focus. In an age of speed, it calls for stillness. The silence of the lodge room, the slow pace of degree work, the meditative rhythm of ritual. These are rare and needed experiences. Freemasonry today is no longer at the center of political or cultural life as it once was. But perhaps that is not its purpose. Perhaps its strength lies in being out of step with a world that rushes past meaning, with a culture that prizes novelty over wisdom. Let us imagine a lodge tonight. The walls are old, the symbols familiar. A new candidate stands blindfolded at the door. He is asked, "What do you seek?" His answer is ancient yet still relevant: light. The journey he will take is one walked by millions before him, not toward fame or power, but toward understanding. He will learn that brotherhood is not uniformity, but unity in diversity. That truth is not shouted, but revealed in degrees. This final chapter is not a conclusion, but a doorway. The craft continues. Its future is unwritten, and like the unfinished Temple of Solomon, it invites each generation to add a stone. As we close, let us reflect on what we have learned, that Freemasonry is a mystery school, a moral system, a community of seekers, that its history is vast and varied, that its influence is subtle but real, and that its greatest secret is not hidden in archives, but lived in the hearts of its members. Thank you for walking this path. May your own search for light, whatever form it takes, be steady, sincere, and guided by the compass of truth. The work is never done, but the journey is its own reward. Good night. Welcome again, dear listener. Tonight, as moonlight softens the edges of thought, let us travel to a time of candles and revolution, of salons and secret meetings, a time when reason became the guiding light of Europe. This is the era of enlightenment, and it is in this age of profound transformation that Freemasonry found fertile ground to grow and flourish. Tonight's journey explores how the ideals of Freemasonry and the currents of the Enlightenment converged to shape thought, culture, and power in the 18th century. In Europe was a time of awakening. Scholars, philosophers, and reformers began to question the authority of monarchs, the dogma of churches, and the traditions that had defined the medieval world. They sought not to destroy, but to illuminate. Reason, science, liberty, and tolerance became the new cornerstones of intellectual life. And in this spirit of exploration and dialogue, Freemasonry emerged not as a relic of the past, but as a brotherhood aligned with the future. While its origins lay in operative stone masonry and medieval guilds, by the 1700s, Freemasonry had evolved into something speculative, a system of moral and philosophical teachings clothed in ancient symbols and rituals. Lodges became places not only of initiation, but of conversation. The members were not all alike. They included aristocrats and artisans, deists and believers, scientists and artists. But within the lodge, all were brothers, bound by the pursuit of knowledge and the belief in progress. Enlightenment thinkers admired order and structure, and the Masonic Lodge reflected both. Its rituals embodied rational symbolism. Its governance was based on elections and constitutions. In many ways, the Lodge became a model of what an ideal society might be: hierarchical yet egalitarian, mystical yet rational, ancient yet modern. Philosophers such as Voltaire were drawn to Freemasonry late in life. In 1778, shortly before his death, Voltaire was initiated into a Parisian lodge, an act rich with symbolism. The great critic of church and state, the champion of civil liberties, found in the lodge a space where belief and inquiry could coexist. Voltaire's presence lent legitimacy to the fraternity, even as it remained cloaked in secrecy. Other Enlightenment figures joined as well. Benjamin Franklin, a printer, inventor, and statesman, was a dedicated Mason who saw the lodge as an engine of civic virtue and mutual aid. In his writings and his diplomacy, he carried Masonic ideals across the Atlantic. In Germany, Gotthold Ephraim Lessing explored Masonic themes in his dramas and essays, portraying the fraternity as a custodian of universal truths hidden from dogmatic eyes. Lodges became microcosms of Enlightenment society. They fostered debate, philanthropy, and reform. In an age of censorship, they provided a semi-private space where ideas could flourish. They were not political in the modern sense, but their values often aligned with reformist or revolutionary goals. In France, Italy, and the American colonies, many Masons supported movements for independence, constitutional monarchy, or democratic governance. The connection between Freemasonry and revolution has long been debated. It is true that many revolutionaries were Masons, but not all Masons were revolutionaries. Freemasonry taught freedom of conscience, not rebellion. It advocated for justice, not chaos. Yet the values it instilled, liberty, equality, fraternity, found echoes in revolutionary slogans and constitutions. It is no coincidence that these very words became the motto of the French Revolution. In the American colonies, Freemasonry played a visible role in the formation of a new nation. Many founding fathers were Masons: George Washington, Paul Revere, John Hancock, and others. The cornerstone of the U.S. Capitol was laid in a Masonic ceremony. Masonic lodges served as meeting places for discussions about rights, governance, and unity. The lodge offered not only fraternity, but a framework for civic identity. In the young United States, Freemasonry embodied a spirit of voluntary association and moral education. It promoted public virtue, self-discipline, and mutual assistance. Masonic charities supported widows and orphans. Its rituals, though ancient, were repurposed for the new republic. The tools of the builder became the symbols of a society under construction. In France, however, the story was more turbulent. Lodges flourished before the Revolution, drawing nobles and intellectuals alike. But as political tensions rose, some viewed Freemasonry with suspicion. Was it a subversive force, a cabal of conspirators? During the Reign of Terror, many Masons were executed. The lodge was seen as both symptom and scapegoat for the upheaval of the age. Yet, after the revolution subsided, Freemasonry re-emerged. Under Napoleon, it was reorganized and expanded. Lodges became instruments of imperial policy, promoting loyalty and order. Later, in the 19th century, French Freemasonry would take on a more secular and progressive character, championing public education and laïcité, the separation of church and state. Across Europe, the Enlightenment left a permanent imprint on Freemasonry. The rituals remained, but the meanings deepened. The lodge became a school of civic virtue. The tools of the Mason were reinterpreted through the lens of philosophy. The temple was not just a structure of stone, but a symbol of human potential. This evolution was not without tension. Some traditionalists resisted the philosophical turn. Others embraced it fully, blending Masonic symbolism with esoteric systems, alchemical ideas, or mystical speculation. The Enlightenment opened doors, but it also revealed differences in interpretation. What united the Masons of this age was not uniformity, but dialogue. Let your thoughts now wander through a candlelit lodge in 18th century Vienna. Imagine Mozart, a Mason himself, composing music for Masonic ceremonies, hymns that elevated the soul and honored the craft. Picture a circle of men in powdered wigs and embroidered aprons, discussing nature, reason, and the rights of man. These were the builders of ideas. The Enlightenment and Freemasonry were not identical, but they were kindred. Each sought to raise humanity, one through discourse, the other through ritual. Each valued truth, justice, and human dignity, and each believed that the light of reason could dispel the darkness of ignorance. As you close your eyes tonight, remember that history is not merely a series of events, but a conversation across time. The lodge, like the salon, was a place where minds met and futures were imagined. And in that quiet exchange of ideas, something powerful began to stir. Let that thought guide you now into deeper rest, where the symbols still glow and the dialogue continues. Welcome once more, dear listener. As the night deepens and shadows gather quietly at the edge of awareness, let us step into a more unsettling chamber of Masonic history. A space not within the lodge, but in the world beyond its walls. This is the realm of fear, suspicion, and conspiracy. Tonight, we explore the long history of anti-Masonic theories, the myths and accusations that have clung to the fraternity for centuries, and how fear of the unknown has often shaped public perception more than truth. From its earliest days, Freemasonry has drawn attention. Its secrecy, symbolism, and rituals intrigued some and alarmed others. While the lodge doors were closed to outsiders, imaginations wandered freely. Rumors filled the gaps left by silence. In an age of growing literacy and political upheaval, these rumors began to crystallize into full-fledged theories, some curious, others dangerous. One of the earliest organized backlashes against Freemasonry occurred in the 18th century as the fraternity expanded across Europe and the American colonies. Critics, especially from religious institutions, accused Masons of harboring heretical beliefs or practicing occult rites. The Catholic Church, in particular, saw Freemasonry as a rival authority. In 1738, Pope Clement Thorn issued the first of many papal bulls condemning the craft. His decree, In Eminenti Apostolatis, warned that Masons were a thur. The suspicion was not entirely without context. Freemasonry welcomed men of diverse faiths and often promoted deist or Enlightenment ideals. This tolerance, though admirable to some, appeared threatening to dogmatic institutions. The lodge, with its private meetings and whispered words, seemed a challenge to religious orthodoxy and centralized control. In Protestant regions, especially in Germany and Britain, fears took a different shape. There, Masonry was sometimes linked to Illuminism, a movement emphasizing rationalism and secularism. The most infamous manifestation of this was the Bavarian Illuminati, founded in 1776 by Adam Weishaupt. Though it was short-lived and relatively small, the Illuminati became a lightning rod for suspicion. Because some of its members were also Masons, critics began to conflate the two. Soon, Freemasonry and the Illumin. This narrative found fertile ground in the turmoil of the French Revolution. Conservative thinkers, searching for a cause behind the fall of monarchy and church, seized on the idea that secret societies, especially Masons, were orchestrating revolution behind the scenes. In his 1797 book, Proofs of a Conspiracy, Scottish professor John Robison argued that Freemasons and Illuminists were subverting Christian civilization. Similar ideas were spread by French cleric Augustin Baruel, who claimed the Revolute. Though lacking solid evidence, these works had influence. Their stories were gripping, their claims sensational, and their enemies clear. The notion of a shadowy cabal manipulating history from behind closed doors proved irresistible to many, and planted the seeds of conspiracy theories that still echo today. In the United States, the first major anti-Masonic movement arose in the early 19th century. It began not with rumor, but with a disappearance. In 1826, William Morgan, a former Mason who threatened to publish a book revealing the secrets of the fraternity, vanished under mysterious circumstances in western New York. Many believed he had been abducted, or worse, by Masons seeking to protect their rights. Though the facts remain unclear, public outrage was intense. The Morgan affair triggered a wave of anti-Masonic sentiment. Lodges were attacked, members were harassed, and in a striking turn, a political movement emerged, the Anti-Masonic Party. This was the first third party in American history dedicated to opposing what it saw as Masonic corruption and elitism. Though it eventually faded, the movement revealed how quickly suspicion could become mobilized power. Throughout the 19th and 20th centuries, Freemasonry continued to attract criticism and fear. In some cases, authoritarian regimes targeted the craft directly. In Nazi Germany, Masons were persecuted alongside Jews, Roma, and others. Hitler's regime saw Freemasonry as part of a global Jewish conspiracy, and many lodges were closed or destroyed. In Stalin's Soviet Union, secret societies were outlawed entirely. In Franco's Spain, Masons were imprisoned and executed. Totalitarianism and Freemasonry could... Elsewhere, conspiracy theories flourished. In the United States, books and pamphlets warned of Masonic influence in politics, finance, and even religion. The fact that many U.S. presidents had been Masons only fueled these suspicions. To critics, this suggested collusion. To supporters, it showed that Freemasonry promoted civic responsibility. Religious opposition also persisted. Some evangelical Christian groups claimed that Masonic rituals were incompatible with biblical faith. They pointed to the use of allegory, the oaths taken on holy books, and the supposed secrecy surrounding belief in a supreme being. While some churches tolerated Masonic membership, others forbade it outright. Perhaps the most sensational claims came from fringe theorists who linked Freemasonry to occultism, Satanism, or extraterrestrial forces. These ideas, often drawing on misunderstood symbols and fictionalized histories, were popularized in novels, films, and pseudoscientific texts. Dan Brown's The Lost Symbol is only one of many works to blend fact and fiction into a narrative of hidden control. At the heart of many of these theories is a common pattern. Secrecy breeds speculation. When people feel excluded or powerless, they may turn to stories that explain complexity in terms of hidden control. Freemasonry, with its quiet dignity and private rituals, makes a perfect canvas for these projections. And yet, within the fraternity, these fears are met with quiet resolve. Masons rarely defend themselves through argument or spectacle. They continue their work, confident in the integrity of their tradition. Their silence is not evasive, it is principled. They believe that character reveals more than words. This approach has its risks. In an age of misinformation, silence can be misunderstood as guilt. But for Freemasons, the lodge remains a sanctuary, not for conspiracy, but for contemplation. Its secrets are not weapons, they are metaphors, tools for reflection and moral growth. Let your thoughts rest now in that quiet space. Imagine a lodge surrounded by rumors, but undisturbed within. A place where light persists, even when misunderstood. A place where truth is not shouted, but shared. The story continues, even when the world misreads it. And so we sleep, wrapped not in fear, but in stillness. Welcome again, dear listener. Tonight, as your thoughts settle into stillness and the world outside falls into shadow, we enter one of the most profound and contested realms of the Masonic tradition, the question of faith. Freemasonry and religion, two forces both ancient and enduring, have long shared a complex relationship. Tonight, we will trace the threads of that relationship, from tolerance to tension, from shared reverence to deep suspicion. Freemasonry, at its heart, is not a religion. It has no dogma, no clergy, no promise of salvation, and no prescribed path to the divine. Yet it speaks often of the sacred. It invokes a supreme being, celebrates moral virtue, and surrounds its rituals with spiritual imagery. It honors ancient texts, whether the Bible, the Quran, or other scriptures, and places them upon the altar of its lodges. It refers to God as the great architect of the universe, an inclusive title that allows for broad interpretation. This spiritual openness is one of Freemasonry's defining features, and also one of its most misunderstood. To many Masons, this is not a contradiction, but a harmony. The lodge is a place where men of different faiths can gather in shared moral purpose without requiring them to compromise their private beliefs. It is a space for reflection, not conversion. Unity, not uniformity. But such openness has often aroused suspicion from institutional religions. They see in Masonry a rival authority, one that operates outside the bounds of established church hierarchy. They question the oaths, the secrecy, and the symbolism. They ask, can a man serve two masters, his faith and his lodge? The Catholic Church has answered that question with a clear no. Since the 18th century, the Vatican has condemned Freemasonry in a series of papal bulls. The first, in Eminenti Apostolatus, 1738, was issued by Pope Clement XIII. He warned that Masonic secrecy and its mixing of creeds posed a danger to faith and order. Later pronouncements reaffirmed this stance, declaring that Catholics who joined Masonic lodges were in a state of grave sin. This position remains official to this day. The 1983 declaration by the Congregation for the Doctrine of the Faith, signed by then Cardinal Joseph Ratzinger, reiterated that Masonic principles were irreconcilable with the doctrine of the Church. Catholics who became Freemasons, it said, were barred from receiving Holy Communion. Protestant responses have varied more widely. Some denominations, especially in the Anglo-American world, have coexisted with Freemasonry for centuries. In the United States and Britain, it has not been uncommon to find ministers, bishops, and lay leaders who were also Masons. These churches often see Masonry as a civic or fraternal organization, compatible with Christian life. But not all agree. Evangelical groups have sometimes taken a hard stance. They cite what they see as the relativism of Masonry, its willingness to accept all faiths, as incompatible with the exclusivity of Christian truth. They critique the use of rituals, oaths, and symbols drawn from ancient mystery traditions. Some see in the craft the echoes of Babel, of man seeking God by his own design. Islamic perspectives also vary. In some Muslim-majority countries, Freemasonry is banned, often viewed as a Western influence or a secretive political force. In others, individual Muslims have participated in lodges, particularly in cosmopolitan cities like Cairo or Istanbul. The teachings of the craft about morality, charity, and unity resonate with Islamic principles, but the suspicion of hidden agendas often clouds the public view. Jewish engagement with Freemasonry has historically been significant. In many parts of Europe, Masonic lodges were among the first institutions to accept Jewish members on equal terms. The ideals of tolerance and brotherhood offered an alternative to exclusion and persecution. Notable Jewish Masons contributed to both religious and secular life, bridging traditions and advancing dialogue. Yet even here, caution remains. Some religious authorities have raised concerns about dual loyalty or the theological implications of Masonic teachings. And in the broader world, anti-Semitic conspiracy theories have often intertwined with anti-Masonic ones, accusing Jews and Masons of joint plots to undermine religion, society, or the state. Despite all this tension, there is within Freemasonry a sincere attempt to honor the spiritual dimension of life. Its rituals speak of light and truth, of building temples not of stone, but of the soul. It asks its members to believe in something higher than themselves, not to dictate what that is, but to remind them that they are not the center of the universe. Within the lodge, prayers may be offered, but they are never sectarian. The great architect is invoked, but not defined. The sacred book may be the Bible, the Quran, the Torah, or others, depending on the faith of the lodge or the individual. This diversity is not seen as dilution, but as strength. Freemasonry teaches that the moral law is written not only in scripture, but in conscience. That truth is not confined to one creed. That service to others is a sacred duty, regardless of religious label. It is a humanistic faith, not in opposition to religion, but as a companion to it. Still, for many outside the craft, this openness is unsettling. They ask, if Masonry accepts all gods, does it truly honor any? If it allows all paths, does it lead anywhere at all? These are fair questions, and Freemasonry does not claim to have final answers. It does not offer salvation. It offers a method, a way of seeking, a discipline of symbols, stories, and community. Some find in this a profound harmony, others a dangerous ambiguity. And so Freemasonry walks a narrow path between belief and doubt, between reverence and rejection. It invites men to bring their faith, but not to impose it, to build bridges, not walls, to light a candle rather than curse the darkness. Let your thoughts rest now in that gentle space, a chamber not of doctrine but of dialogue, a lodge where prayers rise not to divide but to unite. The night is long and the questions eternal, but still the journey continues. Welcome once again, dear listener. Let your thoughts soften and your mind relax, for tonight we turn our attention to one of the most captivating aspects of Freemasonry, its symbols. These ancient emblems found carved into stone, woven into aprons, and whispered through ritual are not mere decorations. They are keys to a deeper understanding, doors that open not to secret rooms, but to inner truths. Freemasonry speaks in symbols because symbols reach where words cannot. They speak a language older than alphabets, one that resonates with intuition, memory, and myth. Tonight, we will journey through the most enduring Masonic symbols, exploring their meanings, their mysteries, and their continued power in shaping the moral imagination of the craft. The most iconic of all Masonic symbols is the square and compasses. Seen on lodge buildings, rings, and books, it is both a mark of fraternity and a lesson in virtue. The square teaches morality, that we must act with fairness and integrity. The compasses teach self-restraint, that we must draw boundaries around our desires. Together they form a reminder. Live justly, live within measure. Between the square and compasses often rests a letter, the letter G. In some traditions, this stands for geometry, the ancient science of measurement and harmony. In others, it represents God, the divine architect who brings order to chaos. In either reading, it points towards structure, spiritual or scientific, as the path to understanding. The all-seeing eye, or eye of providence, is another potent emblem. Encased in rays of light, it watches from above, not in judgment, but in awareness. It signifies the omnipresence of the divine, the idea that nothing is hidden, and that the true Mason is always observed by the eye of conscience and higher truth. Another central symbol is the level. It teaches equality. In the lodge, all men meet on the level, regardless of title, wealth, or background. The level reminds Masons that true worth lies in character, not in station. Alongside it is the plumb, which teaches uprightness, both moral and literal. It is a call to stand straight in one's principles, guided by an inner verticality. The trowel, though simple, carries profound meaning. It is used to spread the cement of brotherly love, to bind members together in unity. The lodge is not merely a gathering of individuals, it is a temple built from human hearts. The trowel reminds Masons that their work is communal, their task one of healing division and promoting harmony. Then there is the rough ashlar and the perfect ashlar, two stones that symbolize the journey of transformation. The rough ashlar is the unshaped stone, raw and natural. It represents the Mason as he enters, imperfect but with potential. Through learning, discipline, and reflection, he shapes himself into the perfect ashlar, a stone fit for the temple of humanity. It is not a physical transformation, but a spiritual one. The pillars, Boaz and Jachin, stand at the entrance of the lodge, echoing the great pillars of Solomon's temple. They represent strength and establishment, but also duality. One is passive, the other active. One stands for mercy, the other for justice. Together they frame the passage between the known and the unknown, the outer world and the sacred interior. Other symbols are more enigmatic. The blazing star, for instance, can represent divine guidance, the light of reason, or the Star of Bethlehem. The beehive speaks of industry and cooperation, each member working for the collective good. The anchor symbolizes hope, the ark, safe passage, the hourglass, the fleeting nature of time. The apron worn by Masons is itself a symbol. It marks the wearer as a laborer, not of stone, but of the soul. It recalls the working tools of the ancient Masons and honors the dignity of honest toil. The apron is white, symbolizing purity of intention. It is not a mark of pride, but of humility. Rituals reinforce these symbols through movement and repetition. As a candidate progresses through degrees, he encounters each symbol not just as an image, but as an experience. He learns their meanings gradually, allowing them to unfold within his own consciousness. In this way, the lodge becomes a living text, a theater of ideas where symbols guide the spirit. Why does Freemasonry place such importance on symbols? Because symbols endure. Words change, doctrines evolve, but symbols remain. They allow for personal interpretation, adapting to each Mason's journey. They conceal and reveal. They hide truths from the unprepared, while offering insight to the initiated. This symbolic language is not unique to Masonry. It draws from ancient sources, Egyptian hieroglyphs, Greek mysteries, Hebrew scriptures, Christian allegory, and more. It is a tapestry woven from many traditions, harmonized within the framework of the craft. In this sense, Freemasonry is not a creator of symbols, but a curator, gathering and preserving the wisdom of the ages. The danger, of course, is misinterpretation. Symbols, by their nature, invite projection. Outsiders may see in them what they fear or desire. This has fueled many conspiracy theories, as we've seen. But within the lodge, symbols are not used to obscure. They are used to elevate, to challenge the Mason to look inward, to reflect, and to rise. Let your mind now imagine a darkened lodge room, lit only by candles. In the east, the master holds the gavel. The tracing board is before the candidate, its symbols glowing faintly. A hush falls. The lesson begins. The candidate listens, not just with ears but with heart. Each image is a seed, planted in silence, destined to bloom in its own time. This is the heart of Masonic teaching, not indoctrination, but inspiration. Not certainty, but the courage to question. Not commandments, but symbols, quietly pointing the way. As the night deepens and your thoughts grow still, let these symbols rest gently in your imagination. Let them speak not as puzzles, but as poetry. You need not decipher everything now. The work of the Mason, like the shaping of the stone, is gradual. Each symbol will reveal itself in time. The compasses, the square, the level, the plumb. They are not tools of secrecy. They are tools of self-mastery. And in that quiet work, something sacred begins to rise. Welcome once more, dear listener. As we settle into the quiet rhythms of the night, let us turn our gaze toward the physical world, the world of stone and structure, of arches and altars, of sacred geometry and silent cathedrals. Tonight, our journey leads us into the realm of architecture and to the special relationship between Freemasonry and the built environment. For to understand the Masonic tradition is to see the world not only as it is, but as it might be shaped, with intention, with harmony. The very origins of Freemasonry lie in stone. The fraternity traces its symbolic lineage to the medieval builders of cathedrals and castles, the operative masons who labored with chisel and mallet, who understood the secrets of weight and balance, who carved meaning into matter. Though the modern fraternity is speculative rather than operative, it retains deep reverence for these ancestral craftsmen. Masons do not worship buildings, but they honor what buildings represent: order, endurance, and aspiration. A temple is not merely stone upon stone. It is the embodiment of an idea, a sanctuary where the human and the divine meet. Freemasonry sees architecture as a language, one that speaks of purpose, proportion, and the moral geometry of the universe. Let us begin with the concept of the temple. In Masonic ritual, every lodge is described as a symbolic temple. It is oriented east to west, illuminated from the east, where the sun rises, where knowledge dawns. Its furnishings are drawn from biblical and mythological sources, particularly the Temple of Solomon, which serves as the archetype of sacred space. This temple is never fully built. It is always in progress, always under construction, just as the mason is always laboring to perfect his soul. The Temple of Solomon holds deep symbolic resonance. In the biblical account, it was constructed with divine guidance and precise measurements. Its stones were hewn without sound of hammer or axe upon the sacred mount, an allegory for the inner work done in silence and discipline. The pillars Boaz and Jachin, the inner sanctum, the Ark of the Covenant, all appear in Masonic lore not as historical artifacts, but as metaphors for moral and spiritual truths. Freemasonry also venerates the idea of the builder. Hiram Abiff, the legendary architect of Solomon's Temple, is central to Masonic allegory. He is portrayed as a master craftsman, faithful unto death, a symbol of integrity and sacrifice. The legend of Hiram teaches lessons of loyalty, courage, and the eternal quest for wisdom. It is enacted in Masonic ritual as a drama of death and rebirth, echoing ancient initiatory rites and the cycles of nature. Beyond myth, the influence of Masonic ideas can be seen in real architecture. In the 18th and 19th centuries, as Freemasonry flourished, many public buildings, churches, and monuments were designed with Masonic themes in mind. Architects who were themselves Masons incorporated symbolic elements into their work. Obelisks, pyramids, checkerboard floors, and celestial alignments. In Washington, D.C., the city's layout reflects Masonic ideals. Pierre-Charles L'Enfant, the French-American architect who designed the Capitol, was deeply influenced by Enlightenment and Masonic principles. The use of compass and square in planning, the orientation of buildings, and the presence of Masonic symbols in cornerstones and monuments all testify to a vision of civic architecture as moral architecture. One of the most prominent Masonic structures is the George Washington Masonic National Memorial in Alexandria, Virginia. Modeled after the ancient lighthouse of Alexandria, it is both a tribute and a temple, a place where architecture honors character. Within its halls are murals, statues, and altars, all echoing the themes of moral development and universal brotherhood. Freemasonry's architectural language extends even to the humble lodge room. Though simple in appearance, each element is carefully arranged. The east is the seat of the master, who represents wisdom. The west houses the senior warden, who embodies strength. The south is the domain of the junior warden, who brings beauty. These cardinal positions are not arbitrary. They reflect a cosmic order, a harmony of governance. The floor of the lodge is often tiled in black and white, a mosaic pavement symbolizing the dualities of existence, light and dark, good and evil, life and death. The ceiling may be painted with stars, a reminder that the lodge is not confined by walls, but part of the greater universe. Even the tools displayed, the level, plumb, trowel, and chisel, speak to virtues and disciplines needed in building one's character. Sacred geometry underpins much of this symbolism. The triangle, the circle, the square. These are not mere shapes, but expressions of universal principles. The triangle symbolizes the trinity of wisdom, strength, and beauty. The circle represents unity, eternity, and the divine. The square reflects justice and moral foundation. Masons study these forms not only for aesthetic reasons, but to attune themselves to the harmony of creation. In Renaissance Europe, where Freemasonry began to take its speculative form, The revival of classical architecture was accompanied by a rediscovery of ancient mathematical wisdom. Architects and philosophers alike saw geometry as the key to unlocking the mysteries of the cosmos. Masonic thinkers inherited this worldview, blending Neoplatonic ideas with craft tradition. Let us pause now and imagine a cathedral rising against a gray sky, its spire pointing heavenward, its walls etched with symbols. Each stone was set with care, each arch calculated to catch the light. Such buildings are not mere shelters, they are statements. They declare that mankind, though mortal, can aspire to the eternal. In this vision, the Mason is not just a builder, but a philosopher. His temple is not of stone, but of conduct. His compass draws circles of compassion. His square checks the angles of his behavior. His plumb line measures truth. Each lodge, each ritual, each symbol is part of this architecture of the soul. The notion of the unfinished temple is especially powerful. It suggests that no Mason, no society is complete. There is always more to build, more to understand, more to refine. In this light, architecture becomes a spiritual path, a way of aligning the inner and outer worlds. As the candlelight flickers across ancient carvings, let your thoughts drift through vaulted halls and sunlit cloisters. Feel the coolness of stone beneath your hand. Hear the silence of sacred space. This is the Mason's language, not one of words, but of form, proportion, and resonance. And in that stillness may you remember that we are all builders of something, even if only of ourselves. The temple is never finished, but the work is holy. Welcome back, dear listener. As night deepens and the stars take their silent places in the sky, we turn now to the world of power. Not power of the spirit, but of the state. Freemasonry, though a fraternity dedicated to moral development and universal brotherhood, has long walked the shadowed corridors of political influence. Tonight, we trace its intersections with revolutions, governments, and movements for change, exploring how a secretive society has, at times, shaped the fate of nations. Freemasonry has never claimed to be a political organization. Its principles discourage discussions of politics and religion within the lodge, seeking unity over division. And yet, throughout history, Masons have played outsized roles in moments of political upheaval and transformation. Why? Perhaps because the values espoused within the lodge, liberty, equality, fraternity, resonated deeply with the aspirations of reformers and revolutionaries. Let us begin with the Enlightenment, that great upheaval of thought that swept Europe in the 17th and 18th centuries. Freemasonry flourished in this period, drawing philosophers, scientists, and statesmen into its ranks. In lodges across Paris, London, and Berlin, ideas were exchanged in an atmosphere of equality and intellectual freedom. These were among the few places where nobles and commoners, Christians and Jews, could meet as brothers. It is no coincidence that many figures of the American and French revolutions were Masons. In America, George Washington, Benjamin Franklin, Paul Revere, and other founding fathers were members of the craft. Masonic lodges served as meeting places for like-minded individuals committed to self-governance and natural rights. The principles inscribed in the U.S. Constitution, separation of powers, freedom of conscience, republicanism, reflect the rational ideals also cherished within the lodge. The Great Seal of the United States, with its unfinished pyramid and all-seeing eye, is often cited as evidence of Masonic influence. While its origins are more complex, the symbolism certainly reflects the Enlightenment spirit. The eye, radiant above the pyramid, speaks of divine providence and vigilance. The structure itself, incomplete, echoes the Masonic idea that the great project of liberty is always a work in progress. In France, too, Masons played crucial roles. The Marquis de Lafayette, a hero of both the American and French revolutions, was a prominent Mason. In the volatile years before the storming of the Bastille, lodges in Paris were hubs of radical discourse. While not all revolutionaries were Masons, and not all Masons were revolutionaries, the ideals of liberty and fraternity found fertile ground in both. But not all political uses of Masonry were revolutionary. In monarchies such as Prussia and England, Masons also occupied high offices and supported the existing order. Lodges became places where elites could forge networks of influence. In some cases, royalty themselves were grand masters. This dual role, supporting both stability and change, reflects the diversity within the craft and the flexibility of its values. In Latin America, the 19th century independence movements were strongly associated with Masonry. Leaders such as Simón Bolívar, José de San Martín, and Benito Juárez were known Masons. Lodges served as incubators for anti-colonial sentiment and organizational planning. In many cases, the Masonic model of ritual, hierarchy, and secrecy proved useful in building underground resistance movements. Yet the political involvement of Freemasons has not always been welcomed. In authoritarian regimes, the craft has often been banned or persecuted. As discussed in earlier chapters, Hitler, Stalin, and Franco viewed Masonic lodges as centers of subversion and conspiracy. Their intolerance stemmed from fear of an organization that fostered independent thought, loyalty to principles beyond the state, and networks that transcended national borders. In the modern era, the political role of Freemasonry has become more ambiguous. In some countries, it continues to wield quiet influence through elite networks. In others, it is largely ceremonial, a society of philanthropists and retirees rather than revolutionaries. The secrecy of Masonic membership makes it difficult to trace direct lines of political power, and this opacity has fueled both fascination and suspicion. Scandals have occasionally rocked Masonic institutions. In Italy during the 1980s, the Propaganda Due P2 Lodge was revealed to be involved in political corruption, banking scandals, and plots to undermine democracy. Though widely condemned by regular Masonic authorities, the affair tarnished the public image of Freemasonry and reinforced fears of hidden influence. Still, many Masons insist that their organization is not political, that it prepares individuals for responsible citizenship, but does not dictate ideologies. They argue that while Masons have been found at the heart of many historical events, they acted as individuals, not as agents of the fraternity. And yet, the symbols endure. The square and compasses appear on courthouses, monuments, and currency. Masonic funerals are held for presidents and prime ministers, and in some countries rumors persist that key decisions are made not in parliament, but behind the doors of the lodge. What are we to make of all this? Perhaps Freemasonry's political significance lies not in shadowy control, but in moral preparation. The lodge does not instruct its members how to vote, but it encourages them to think, to question, to seek justice. It teaches self-discipline, humility, and service. These are the virtues of statesmen, not demagogues. Imagine now a lodge meeting in a time of revolution. Outside, the city churns with unrest, but inside, candles flicker. A man kneels before the altar, taking an oath not to a party or faction, but to truth, virtue, and the betterment of mankind. This is the heart of Masonic politics, not domination, but dedication. Let your mind rest now in that still chamber. The world outside may rage with ambition, but within the temple the tools of building remain the same, and the greatest work is not to rule others, but to rule oneself.